Our first presentation is about hallucinations, confidentiality, competence, and ethics of generative AI for lawyers. The presentation will be given by Professor Randy Waldman, who serves as the director of the Juvenile Defender Clinic at Emory University School of Law. In this role, Randy supervises law students in holistic representation of young people charged with delinquent offenses. In addition to representing these clients in juvenile court cases, she and her students also represent them in special education proceedings, school suspension proceedings, and other forms according to the client's needs. Professor Waldman also engages in policy work related to juvenile justice and education issues and teaches courses in juvenile justice, criminal procedure, and education law. We're very happy to have Professor Waldman with us this morning. Thank you very much.
All right, good morning again. Welcome. I volunteered to lead this session on AI at a different training about 6 months ago because it strikes me that I know nothing about AI. And one of the best ways to learn about AI was to force myself to teach other people about AI. I'm not sure I've succeeded in that. But what I'd like to do, and it's a little bit hybrid is a little weird, right? Because I'm not reading the chats because I'm facing the room. But I'd like the chat, the Zoom folks to participate. Raise your hands virtually, add things into the chat. I promise those of you will interact with each other that way, have a great conversation. I'll read it all later. For those in the room though, how many of you have used what I'm going to refer to as generative AI, and I'm going to explain what all that means later, but ChatGPT, Claude, any of those, for any purpose at all, in the last year? How many of you used it for work in the last year? For fun? My first ever use of generative AI was to plan my vacation a couple of summers ago. I threw in, I knew what country I was going to, and I asked it to plan me a 14-day itinerary. And after a lot of prompting of like, oh no, I'm 50, please try again, I got an itinerary. That was a great starting point for where I was going. Work has come slower, but one of the things I use ChatGPT for is my title of this very presentation. That came from ChatGPT. So there are some uses. The uses have grown exponentially. So my first set of data was data from February of 2024, approximately 2 years ago. Approximately 2 years ago, we weren't that many people using AI. We had 20% for tasks at work, 6% for something new, 17% for entertainment. Those numbers keep going up, right? So again, these are February 24 data. This YouGov data is from March of 2025. We're going up, right? We're measuring different things, but how often people are using AI. We're now at U.S. adults who have never used it, we're 30%. So 70% of U.S. adults have used generative AI for some reason. The vast majority of those who have never used it, shockingly, are 65 and older, right? So the younger you are, the 18 to 29-year-olds, it's only down 18%. I guarantee those under 18, it's even younger, it's even smaller than that, right? I'm in that 45 to 64-year-old category, right? We're coming along, we're just coming along a little slower, right? how our feelings have changed is actually a little bit interesting. We are getting, right, we are using AI much more, but we're starting to distrust it more a little bit each day. And I think that is some healthy skepticism, right? We have learned, right? We went blindly falling into the AI abyss. And then after we blindly fell into the AI abyss, we started to realize, uh-oh, maybe we should take a couple of more steps. And what I'd like to do, right? So all of that, again, monthly visitors to AI, ChatGPT has clearly got the market right now. I think you'll find for lawyers, we use some other things, maybe a little bit more often. But the general population is going first. And then why? Number one, ranking in 2025 of AI, therapy and companionship. That was crazy to me. But also, that for what we do is what our young people are doing, right? There is, right, a little bit far afield from our topic today, but there is what has been called a loneliness epidemic amongst college students. And college students have come of age in COVID, and there's a lot that's happened in those years since then. And AI is taking the place of human companionship. It's taking the place of human interaction and human engagement. Why? Because AI says what you want to hear all the time.
It generally doesn't talk back to you.
It doesn't criticize you. It flatters you. It gives you all sorts of positive endorphin. And so that has been number one. Organization, enhanced learning, finding purpose, right? Some of those, persuading legalese is all the way down to number 20, right? We're not actually its primary use, but it's growing. And we're probably all starting to see AI lawyering, not amongst lawyers, but amongst the general populace. We're probably starting to see people call us and say, but AI said, they're like, well, you're paying me. Well, nobody's actually paying me, but you've hired me for whatever reason. I promise you AI is wrong, right? And so that's why, right, when we talk today, I want to do things. I want to explain why AI, right? Why we have skepticism. How it works is going to be step number one, right? What does it do? How does it get to the results it gets to? Because it is essential that we understand what we're using to understand the gaps of what we're using. And again, AI created some of those slides for me so that I could understand how AI works. Not all of them, I did some of my own stuff. And then we're really going to talk about the ethical uses. And then part 4, really practical uses within ethical parameters. That's going to be Lori's session for the most part. I'm going to talk a little bit. I'm going to broach the topic, but I'm going to really turn that over to Lori. Lori and I are maybe on not opposite ends of the spectrum, but certainly on my much further to the neophyte skepticism side, and Lori is in the all inside. So my caution moments, Lori may not share the same caution. Right? There are things that I will say that I will never use AI for, and maybe never is too strong. But I am probably not going to use AI for some things that Lori might suggest AI is appropriate for. But I'll talk about the things that I am in my comfort zone. Because that's my comfort zone is probably certainly where you're all comfortable with. And then we could start with you think so. So some terms, what do I mean? Artificial intelligence, right? Artificial intelligence has been around forever. Artificial intelligence is generally not what I'm talking about when we talk about ethical concerns, right? It's any technological function based on simple rule-based systems, complex self-learning algorithms, and you see this every day, right? When you log in to Netflix and it recommends what you should watch next, that's AI. When you get into your car and you ask your car how to get to the State Bar building by avoiding traffic, that's AI, right? We use AI in our everyday life and have been for decades, quite honestly, right? Since the internet came about, we've been using it. Siri, Alexa, right? I just activated everybody's phone, right? Those are all AI. Chatbots, when you're arguing with customer service somewhere, that's an AI tool. Extractive AI, AI that finds, achieves, and summarizes existing information, right? Extractive AI, again, not necessarily what I'm talking about with most of the ethics stuff. That's, you're doing a query and it is finding an existing document, right? We don't terribly have a lot of ethical concerns about that. What we're mostly talking about is my next topic, generative AI. How many of you have heard the term generative AI? Anyone not heard the term generative? All right. Generative AI is the new stuff that came out the last 3-ish years when ChatGPT stormed on the scene, arrived with great fanfare, and it is ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, Pilot. Harvey is coming on the scene for lawyers, right? It is all of those, and what it is referring to large language models, LLMs. So sometimes when people say AI, they mean generative AI, they mean LLMs that generate text, images, other new content based on a review of prior information. How does it work? Well, first, terms, and then how does it? So some terms, large language model. Large language models are generative AI. It is an AI neural network that learns to think. It learns generating prose, right? It's drafting things for us. It learns conducting conversations. It is now our chatbots. It learns writing computer code, and it does so by learning a bunch of, by a bunch of inputs and a learning process. A prompt, that's our instruction. And I think Lori is going to talk a lot more about how important our prompts are, how good our prompts are, and our output being really generated by our prompt. Example, my vacation itinerary looks different when I identify that I am 50 and that I, like castles and heights, but not ones that, are going to kill me. It's right. So like my prompt, I had to tell it all those things before I got an itinerary that worked for me. Hallucination. Know what hallucinations are in real life, and generative AI are the same thing. LLMs make stuff up. When an LLM makes stuff up, we call it a hallucination, right? It's factually incorrect, irrelevant, nonsensical responses because of limitations in its data. And so if you push AI to give you an answer, it will give you an answer, but it is not giving you an answer because it is not, right? If we go back to prior page to extractive AI, because it is not extractive AI, it is not pulling a document from a thing that already exists, but it is generating its own answer, right? It sometimes makes those answers, right? And that is where most of the dangers of AI come in for us, for our purposes. More terms and concepts, the big one, open system, closed system. An open system, GPT, Claude, right? Those systems are open. When I refer to an open system, I mean something that the whole world is doing. When you dump input into the open system, that input is available for the AI program to continue learning from you and to incorporate your information into its process. It's a closed system may have been originally trained on publicly available data, but after its original training, it gets pushed out to you, right, to the user, and it doesn't retrain on your data. It keeps your data into your own network. So think of it as a shared drive in your office, in your firm, in whatever life it is. It's your own network, and nobody else has access to your network, as compared to a cloud-based, the world is seeing what I'm putting out there. I'm going to guess that most of us are not living in a world where we have a closed system. Law firms are living in a world where they have, when I say law firms, I mean big law, right? Law firms that have resources and funding, not law firms that are operated by 5 or fewer people, and there's like large variations in the middle. Because closed systems are, and so the vast majority of us are not operating in a closed system world. Legal services doesn't have its own network, I assume, closed system, right? So I imagine, right, I know public defender's offices are in. Does anyone here operate in a closed system? Yeah, maybe we got one more. At a law firm or?
A nonprofit.
Nonprofit, okay. Which nonprofit?
PGA Tour First Tee Foundation, used to all of it.
Okay. So they're not rare in life. They're just rare in the world we live in that are hindered by funding. And so if you're working in a closed system, a lot of the things I tell you are a little bit less, right? The confidentiality issues go down. The ethics issues go down. There are still some, but they decrease. Examples, right? We've talked a little bit about that. Yeah, this is not generative AI, right? Generative AI is the last column. Examples of regular AI. Predictive text on your cell phone, right? Autocorrect on your cell phone, right? When you're doing Grammarly, right? When you're checking the grammar of your document, those are not generative AI tools. But they are AI tools. I was forced to create a AI statement in all of my syllabi. I had to think through, right? Not just don't use generative AI, but what of these can students use? So I want them to spell check. Please. Right? I am not outlawing spell check. You really have to think through how much AI has really shown up in our lives on a day-to-day basis when you're thinking about that. Software with embedded AI features, right? Google, Zoom, Adobe, right? There's every time I have Zoom now, it asks me if I want a transcript, right? There's a lot happening in AI. There are some where you can get an add-on, Lexis or Westlaw. Paid AI software, I throw that. Justice Text is one that's used for public defender firms, public defender offices. They are an AI that works around body cam videos. And then the publicly available generative AI, those could be free, they could be paid, right? And they have various capabilities depending upon whether they are free or paid. ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, Copilot, Perplexity, Harvey. Am I missing any? Probably. Is there anyone used one that's not up there? I can think of. All right.
What's Elon has? Was it an AI thing?
It's not like you can't buy Gronk. Gronk is right, isn't it? Isn't it what he? Gronk. It's his system that, but it's his system that like he uses to operate Twitter, right? I don't.
I think so.
Correct. Or whatever.
It's a,
Talk to it like they talk to Jen.
yeah, it's a generic,
You can buy
works.
Gronk.
Or it's not, I don't even know if it's paid, but yeah, it's the same kind of thing as ChatGPT and all that.
Okay. Can I buy Grok? Or can I log into like grok.com?
Yeah, I mean, I think.
I don't know.
Give Elon money, but
Well, if it's free. Yes, I have not, I don't know anyone using it. I don't know if it's its own system or how that works. I know it posts a lot,
Yeah.
or I've heard, because I'm in the world. So like 3 years ago, 4 years ago, I did an AI section. I did an ethics section for this state bar with the same purpose in mind. I did ethics of social media. But I don't like I don't have any social media accounts. I don't have Facebook, Instagram, X. I don't even have a LinkedIn page. So like it's crazy that I keep doing these technology things when I don't maybe believe in technology. But here we are. Game for it all. All right. How does AI work? It's or generative AI, right? And everything I talk about on how does it work right now, I'm talking about generative AI, LLMs. It starts by a massive amount of training. Books, legal documents, web content, right? To generate language, right? It's just an data dump like you wouldn't believe. And it's like when I mean like everything on the internet, it's data dump for generative AI. AI then breaks that text up into tokens, right? And those tokens, it's not like every word has its own token. It's like parts of words, it's punctuation, right? It breaks it up into tokens. It then learns the patterns of your token, right? They notice the pattern, they notice sequences, they notice patterns, they learn grammar, facts, common word pairings. So when I say the word, the cat sat on the, tell me an answer. Just shout out. Seat. Couch.
Computer.
Fence. Computer. Right? We all have a different answer to that, right? I threw some of my own answers, mat, box, couch, floor, computer. We had some of the same answers, right? It keeps learning. How many times, if I ask this question, is the next answer going to be computer? And if the answer is computer more often than it is anything else, the next prediction is going to be computer, right? So I chose box just for my own exercise, right? And so what happens is that it's during the training, it keeps seeing tokens. It must predict the next token. If it's wrong, it gets corrected. And it repeats that billions of times. Right? It doesn't repeat that 10 times. Right? It repeats that billions of times until it learns what the next token should be after the word the cat sat on the. Right? And that's what it's going to say. And it keeps doing that, right? It doesn't do that once. It doesn't do that when it starts the process. It doesn't just get trained. It keeps getting trained, right? Every time it guesses, it updates millions of internal values to make better guesses next time. And then it's improved using human feedback, right? So you know that when you started using predictive text on your phone, it predicts some crazy words for a while, and then it learns. For me, every time I write the word juvenile, the next word is court. Because on my phone, every time I write the word juvenile, the word court always comes up next. And it's right? Because I am always writing the word juvenile court because I don't use the word juvenile in any other fashion. I use the word youth or young person. So juvenile court is always the next word. But that might not be true for everyone else who types it in their phone in this learning method and learning process, depending upon which form of AI you're. All right, so it's continuous feedback loops that are happening every single time every one of you calls up and logs into ChatGPT. This feedback loop continues to happen. But what it does, and this is why it's important to understand the difference between generative AI and extractive AI, right? It's not a database search. It is not pulling things that already exist. What it does is a super powered autocomplete. legitimately, it is predicting the next word when it writes the first word. And it does that based on context, but all it is doing is predicting the next word. There are some things that AI can't do, and there are people who teach this better than I do because they actually understand the inner workings of AI in a way that I will probably never do. But there are things that, like, if you tell AI, tell me how many words are going to be in the answer you type to my question, generative AI will never be do that because it doesn't know what its next word is going to be until it finishes its answers. And so it's not writing its answer and then counting backwards. And so it'll just say, or whatever number it is, right? It doesn't actually know that because it's predicting one word after the next word until it finishes predicting words. It doesn't think like we think. It's mimicking language patterns. And so there are a lot of criticisms about AI. Can you tell this was generated by AI? And in academia, we have these questions of, right, Turnitin or any of these other AI prediction software. And they're really bad. Particularly, they're really bad for English language learners. They're really bad for English language learners because English language learners are taught to write the way generative AI was taught to write. And so it's really mimicking English language learning in a way that gets trapped in this right mimicking cycle. And so right those, they don't work. You cannot tell if something was written by AI. You can guess. Sometimes it is easy for me to guess that something was written by AI because I know the person's writing and that does not sound like it. But it is right. It is hard for sure because it is designed to mimic our writing. Doesn't necessarily understand facts or law like we do. Can't access real-time legal databases, right? So these are some limitations for our purposes. So AI is calling upon its training. And so they're continuously releasing new versions of them. I don't actually know what version we're on. And the paid version is the version more newer than the free version. And so if a case got reported on 2 weeks ago, ChatGPT doesn't have it because it's not in its training. Right. That's when I talk about ChatGPT, I'm not talking about Westlaw Lexis if they've been updated and some of those AI functions. It reflects systemic biases from training data. And those are, there are a number of them, but it thinks of, right, think back to your 1L torts class on who the reasonable person is, right? That's what ChatGPT is also trained on, right? Your white man, which doesn't take into account cultural biases. Flat out right? If it does an answer, it's predicting another word. Sometimes that prediction is a case that does not exist. With a citation that looks like a real citation but does not exist. It makes up law reviews, it makes up cases, it makes up sites, it makes up all of those things. So all of that, right? That's how very simple version of how it works in a nutshell. One of our faculty members at Emory did this, and he had 45 slides on how it worked. Can't do that because I tried to mimic his slides, and I was like, I don't understand those slides. I don't know what they are. This is the short version of, like, in part, like, hey, AI, give me the abbreviated summary of how you work so that I can train lawyers on how AI functions. So with that, I'm going to start with a very simple hypothetical. I do this as myself. And you can put your own self in there, right? So we use Defender. Uploads the client case file to ChatGPT. Defender then asks ChatGPT to draft a motion to suppress and supporting brief. Defender does not notify the client of use of ChatGPT or get consent. Offender does not cite check cases, usually in research, legal research. So this is where we're gonna go interactive. What have I done wrong? So outside of that, what ethical issues, right? Like, I want you to not just say like, oh, you shouldn't have uploaded. Like, what ethical issues are implicated? And then we're gonna go through the rules, but I want us to think, right? What ethical issues have I implicated in this process? Confidentiality. So, hold on, somebody shouted out confidentiality. It came from this side of the room. What confidentiality rules have I created concerns about? Why is it a concern that I uploaded a case file?
There's names in there.
So there are names in there, and I don't have a closed AI system, right? So when I put my names of my clients into ChatGPT, ChatGPT now has that information and is training itself and can share that information to somebody else out there. Right? So that's number one, is right. I have some client confidentiality. What other?
That there might be like medical and healthcare information, so there might be like federal law confidentiality issues.
HIPAA, FERPA.
So I, as a private individual, are not bound by either HIPAA or FERPA. I am bound by Rule 1.6 of the Georgia Rules of Professional Conduct, which is confidentiality, right? HIPAA and FERPA are not my problem.
The
Rule 1.6 is my problem.
competency, I think, in the, I feel like part of our responsible duties are to, know that part of competent representation would include that you're not breaching confidentiality.
Sure.
So give me 1 second. Randy, could you repeat what she's saying for?
Yes.
I can't hear.
I was told there were mics all in the sky. So I heard confidentiality, right? If people are and duty of competence, right? One of my duties of competence is to avoid the breaching of confidentiality. Was that circular logic of I'm violating both of those in the same thing by breaching confidentiality? What other competence rules am I breaching?
Randy, when you have to get the client's permission to use Chat GPT to do the research, I think, isn't there a permission requirement from clients?
Is it?
So.
Why? What rule? Anyone? I mean, I obviously put a box in there. So I'm hinting.
I mean, it would have to do with who you can go to for outside advice as a lawyer with your case, right? Like, and the rules surrounding that.
Yeah, so the question, right, do I have to get my client's permission? The answer is, right, Jill says maybe that there are rules around who I can information from, right? Can I get advice? Can I just go around asking people, hey, can you help me help my client? What if that is implied? What if that do I need permission for? Right, some of these rules may be a little bit different if our clients are paying, and we'll come back to that.
If you have a paying client, they've chosen you based off of your expertise, your experience, and you are basically trading all of that in your bar license for us to Chat GPT generated result.
Right, so possibly, right, my paid client has chosen me for my expertise, my knowledge. My non-paid client also maybe chose me for my expertise and my knowledge, right? But do I get to charge the client for ChatGPT work?
It should be reduced. I don't
Maybe, right?
in general.
So maybe it should be reduced. Maybe ChatGPT should be charged at the intern rate. I don't, right? We'll come back, right? I got rules. But I have thoughts. I have rules for all of these. What else?
I'm thinking unauthorized practice of law here.
So possibly, right? Can ChatGPT participate in the unauthorized practice of law? Probably. There are some issues, right? It's coming out and we're using it and it's happening. most of our legal aid offices these days have some form of chat bot of, it will help you draft your documents. Now they have disclaimers that say this is not legal advice, but they do, like, legal aid has like a chat bot navigate like some simple family law stuff. And I think Georgia Appleseed has a chat bot that I think was done by, I think some Emory's, it's maybe, like, it was a class project that like collaborated with Georgia Appleseed on their school stuff. So like, right, it's out there, it's coming. What other rules might I have violated? Certainly, like, we're dancing around the, like, did I not like check the case using legal reason? Like, I think our duty of competence requires me to cite check a lot. So I've heard these as questions, and we're going to do this again at the end, right? Confidentiality of the upload. What if I redacted all of the information in my upload? How do we feel that? Taking my client's name out of it.
You still did all the rest of the stuff the same way?
Well, but let's talk about just, have I violated rule 1.6 if I redact my client's information?
You mean if you redact it and then upload it?
And then upload it.
You're asking if you've now gotten around the.
Have I gotten around the confidentiality concerns if I have redacted the information?
I mean, this is still personal.
Probably not.
identifiable.
Yeah.
You have an attorney-client relationship under 1.6.
Yeah, so I'm still disclosing a lot of things that might get me in trouble. And I think, right, so again, we're gonna look at what rules say, what R says now.
I was gonna say, so it also depends on how you redacted it.
Yeah,
So if you redacted it in like Adobe and then you had Adobe clean all of the metadata out
right.
into the file.
So let's pretend I redacted it appropriately. I have redacted it in a way that is better than the Epstein file redactions, so that when you type it in, it doesn't actually unread. I have done a better job than the government. Right? Let's pretend. Does that make it okay?
I still say no, because again, under 1.6, anytime you share any of clients' information, you have to get their permission.
Yeah, so I think the answer is that combined with my like blue box. Right? If I talk to the client and tell them I am doing it, does that make it okay? Not, let me rephrase. If I talk to them and don't tell them I'm doing it, but ask their permission, does that make it okay? And they have provided informed consent. I think we're getting closer, right? I think with informed consent, now there's a question, right? What does informed consent look like when we're dealing with a minor? Do we get the parents' consent? Do we get their kids' consent, right? There's some, right? Those normal 1.14 rules that we need to come into when we're talking about children. But we're getting a lot of accuracy of the citations. I think we can all agree that anytime we write a brief, we should check our citation. Anytime we write a motion, we should check our citations. We should make sure our citations are still good law. Should make sure our citations are actual law. Right? Those things we had to do before, they don't go away. ChatGPT's writing. The accuracy of the legal analysis. Right? Just because ChatGPT wrote it doesn't mean it's good. Right? There's a reason, and I'll come back to this as we go through the rules. There's a reason we go to law school, I think. Right? There's a reason this is a process that we like take our brains and think through stuff. Does accuracy even matter? What if it's a perfectly accurate, well-reasoned document this time. Have we violated the rules? Yes, right? You're still violating the rules if you didn't get caught. Right? That goes back to professionalism is doing the right thing even when nobody is looking, right? We're still violating the rules by not doing our jobs, even when nobody's. All right, so some examples, right? We're not going to be any of these people. I start this, right? These were the early ones. We're finding 2 lawyers for citing fake cases. Judge wants lawyer fined $15K for using AI slop in filing. California issues historic fine over lawyers' ChatGPT fabrications. I've got one more. Judge Atlanta divorce lawyers apparent use of AI, right? They keep coming. In 2023, when the first one of these was issued, probably it was a we didn't know better. There is no longer a we didn't know better experience. We know better, right? This is laziness. This is sloppiness. This is corruption against unfiled. The Atlanta one, I think, is they doubled down at the Court of Appeals. Like they did it. It got entered into the judge's order, which made the judge look bad, which is never a good thing. Because they submitted a court order with that stuff, but then they started arguing to the Court of Appeals with bad law, and then when the judges called them out on bad law, they actually used more bad law. And like they just kept doubling down. Like there was never a sorry. It was a double down every time. But let me back up my bad law with more bad law to tell you why I'm right. Don't do that. My favorite sanction in all of these. Some of them are money. A lot of them are money. My favorite sanction was that, and I think it was the Atlanta case, was that person had to issue that decision to every judge they practice in front of for a year. Right? Every judge they went in front of, they had to tell, I use AI in my old cases. Read all of my briefs going forward. Double check me. That was actually my favorite sanction as I read them. All right. Also, we're not going to be these guys, right? Samsung, right? Again, this is back in 2023. Employees, we go a whole bunch of secrets because they uploaded the document to ChatGPT. They asked some questions, and then ChatGPT, in answering other people's questions that were totally unrelated for people who don't work for the company, use the company secrets because it was now trained on that data, right? That's where the confidentiality issues come in, right? So that's what we're not doing, right? That's why we're not doing it. The ABA came out with guidance in 2024 regarding generative AI. To ensure clients are protected, lawyers using generative AI tools must fully consider their applicable ethical obligations, including their duties to provide competent legal representation, protect client information, to communicate with clients, supervise their employees and agents, to advance only meritorious claims and contentions, ensure candor towards the tribunal. All of the rules that other states have now started to modify, start addressing this. Last 2 months ago, November, I don't know what day it is. So it's 2 months ago, early November, I think it was actually Veterans Day, November 11th, State Bar of Georgia issued its AI guidance. Some states, going through this, some states modified their rules. Some states, when they talk about the duty of competence, put in an entire words right around the duty of technical competence. Some states added comments. Some state bar, some state Supreme Courts issued rules around the use of AI. What Georgia did, and really it is recent, it is 2 months ago, and I added to your materials, which are available via QR code, that we added guidance around each of the rules. And they created an AI homepage. In addition to on the AI homepage, they list all of their guidance. Create a toolkit. They tell you how to use these right? Use the features ethically, correctly. And so what we're going to do is we're going to look at the rule, and then we're going to look at the guidance that Georgia has issued as we go through this. So competence. Jill mentioned competence is one of our main rules. A lawyer shall provide competent representation to a client. Competence requires the legal knowledge, skill, thoroughness, and preparation reasonably necessary for the representation. So, before I tell you what the Georgia Bar said, what do we think competence entails when we're talking about the use of AI?
I think understanding the different models and what information they are capturing and how it could be used. So like understanding their privacy policies and how that might affect confidentiality with your client and things like that. And then also knowing that AI generates hallucinations and that you need to, that I kind of think of AI as like a brand new, like maybe like a college intern, right? Like it's like, oh, here, go research this, tell me what you think. And then, the competence is like you need, as a supervisor, you would need to supervise that research and make sure that, everything being cited is, proper.
So for those online, right, Jill had 2 parts. One is we have to know what it is and how it works so that we know that we're violating confidentiality if we upload our case file, so that we know what the operating privacy policies are in each new feature we start using, right? So that we know if we're in an open circuit or a closed circuit system, right? So that we understand all of that. And then our duty of competence is again, we understand that they actually hallucinate and maybe don't make the right analysis all of the time, and that they are a student intern, but not an Emory Law student intern, because they're awesome. But they're a student intern from not a Georgia, because all of our Georgia schools never do that.
Maybe an undergrad.
Like maybe an undergrad intern, right?
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, in looking into this book, reading some other things, maybe framing the competency part of it, also that you're staying abreast of the technology that is available so that you are being effective in comparison to other attorneys. Not that you should be as bad as I have the case pulled up. I'm gonna send that to you, Jill, for the newsletter. I was like, about, not using it improperly, AI, but using it because there are other attorneys who are using it. Judges are using it. I don't know why they're acting like they're not. Judges are using Westlaw and, they're uploading stuff when they're drafting their orders to tell us that we're wrong when they've denied our things. So like using it, and in appeals as well, so that you're using it because other attorneys are using it. They're using it properly, so you need to be using it properly too. So framing it in that context.
Yeah, so the duty of competence is not just be wary, but it's also take advantage of the things that AI can do. And I'll talk about that. Like, I am not an AI hater, right? In my clinic, my students are asked to experiment with AI. They are also told that if they send me a hallucinated case in any work product, they are automatically failed. And they are automatically going to conduct court. So, like, I want them to experiment carefully, but like, again, with what we're doing, how we're doing it under guidance, because we have to learn how to use it. Because people are using it, like AI necessary to the practice of law. AI will become necessary if you want to advance, move forward, right? We cannot pretend it doesn't exist. And like, you know, those of us who are old, like, are like moving on, but it's there, and people are using it, and there are things people should use it for, right? And so it's both sides of that. So I'm not going to read, there's a lot of small print here. You can't read that. I can't read that. It's on your PowerPoints. These are all the words that exist, but I'm going to give the key categories, right? Understanding and knowledge of AI's limitations and capabilities, right? So our duty of competence requires us to understand AI. And that means what I taught you today is like the tip of the iceberg, but it also means that what I taught you today might be different a month from now, because that is how quickly it is advancing. And so we need to stay on top of AI to learn what it can and cannot do. Human oversight is required. We must look over the work that is done by AI, right? It is, we have the law license. And until such time as lawyers no longer need to be licensed to practice law, right? We are the ones who are required to go through this process. It is important that we communicate with clients and avoid misleading our clients. And I will read this one because we've talked about it. The lawyer is the one representing the client, responsible for providing competent representation. Lawyers should not represent their use of AI tools to clients. Clients must be made aware of the role of AI in their case and how it impacts the representation. Lawyers should maintain transparency with clients regarding the use of AI tools in their cases, with potential benefits and potential risks included, right? Our state bar has told us that they would like us to tell our clients when we're using AI. And I think there's, right, again, there's a fine line between, do we have to tell them we're using grammar tech? No, that's not what they mean. But when we're using it to draft motions, draft documents, are we required to tell our clients that? Probably not that different than having a model documents form and a data bank. But when we're telling it we're having AI create a timeline by uploading all of their documents, I think that's where we need to get into informed consent, right? That's where we need to be having more significant conversations. When we're having it extract information from their data, right? Our clients need to be informed and need to be part of that conversation. That, right, for me, the biggest issue on that, right, I used Justice Text in my office recently. We got a partnership with them back in November. It is brand new for us. We had lots of conversations about the confidentiality of it, but it is a place where we can upload body camera footage. And it decreases the amount of time I have to spend looking at body camera footage drastically. And that is essential because sometimes I get hundreds of hours. And how that works, how that functions is essential to understand what privacy, whether they're using it, whether they're training on it. They assure me all of those things is a no. I am as confident as I can be that all of those things are a no. I got it in writing that all of those things are a no, right? But you have to think about that as you're sharing and talking to your clients about what you're doing and where you're putting it. And then keeping your skills updated, right? It's continuously evolving and like really continuously evolving. I like daily. I think that the difference in what AI can do from what it could do a year ago Doesn't sound to me. All right, rule 1.6. Confidentiality of information. We know this, right? A lawyer shall maintain in confidence all information gained in the professional relationship with the client, including information which the client has requested to be held inviolate, or the disclosure of which would be embarrassing or would likely be detrimental to the client, unless the client gives informed consent, except for the disclosures that are impliedly authorized in order to carry out the representation or required by these rules or other law or by order of the court, right? So that's that, like, except by, right, except by those disclosures that are impliedly authorized. That's a little funny one, right? Because we certainly know that in some circumstances, I am allowed to consult with somebody else. Not by disclosing confident, right? I'm not talking like posting on listservs where we're like trying to anonymize and hypothesize where there's all sorts of questions about whether those are okay or not. But I'm talking about like a legitimate, I need a consultation. I'll use examples for me, from a psychiatrist, from a special education expert, from somebody who can actually help me plan a defense for my client as I'm going through this process, right? I generally err on the side of I'm going to tell my client and have them know that I'm going to have that conversation. But there's an argument that that's impliedly authorized because we're meeting the goals of the representation, and it seems clear that we're going to have that, right? That is something that I could just do. We have to keep that line, right? There are no answers in rules of professional conduct, right? There's duties. So like it's a line, and you have to think about where you are on that line. I generally err in all of these towards I'm going to inform my client and talk to my client because I like talking to my client and making sure they feel as though they're part of my team. But like AI is where the bar is trying to tell us we should really have that conversation. Lawyers should make reasonable efforts to prevent the inadvertent unauthorized disclosure of or unauthorized access to information covered by this rule, right? That's the whole Samsung data breach, right? We're supposed to make sure that we are not accidentally disclosing our client's information by uploading it to a generative AI program. So the guidance the bar gives us with respect to this, right, again, is mostly twofold, is that we're supposed to be aware of data risk, security risks, and vulnerability to breaches. And that's really about uploading client confidential information and identifying and making sure that when we are uploading things, we are not uploading things inappropriately. I can tell you that I, in the world of my clinic students, should theorize and play around and we do not upload a single, like I don't upload clients. I don't ask for permission to upload client files. I don't reject client files. We do not upload clients. That is, again, a hard line that I take that other people do not take. And I know adult offenders regularly upload client files with informed consent and redactions. But client adult criminal defendants files are not actually published. They're not private. They're not as confidential, right? There's public insight ready. And so that's a line that we start.
Right here. Oh, hot tea now. Yeah, okay.
Whoa, somebody came off mute on Zoom. Sorry. All right. This second warning guidance from the bar here is with respect to informed consent and client awareness. So lawyers should obtain informed consent from clients before using generative AI tools that may involve their confidential information, right? That's the easy part, uploading client files. The bar is not saying you should not upload, right? The bar is saying if you're uploading client files, you should have informed consent, right? So different, right? I'm here, like in some things, I'm like all the way here. The client should be aware of how their data will be used, stored, and protected. right? And so it's just saying, if you're doing this, have a conversation. Make sure your client is aware, make sure you understand what your generative AI program is going to do with it, how they're using it, and then explain that to your client so that your client can agree or disagree with whether you're going forward or not. Accountability and oversight, right? This is again still in the confidentiality section. While generative AI can assist in legal processes, attorneys must remain accountable to the information generated. Need to ensure that AI generated content does not inadvertently disclose confidential client information. Same concept, uploading files, how we're uploading them, making sure we're redacting. Software license protections. I think Lori has some info on this. I need help when I read these. I will not lie, right? I took my Justice X conversation and their assurances to somebody else to tell me that we were okay doing it. Because I mean, honestly, that stuff confuses me. How secure it is confuses me. Duty of competence is for me to understand my own limitations and guidance when there are things that go above my head. And so we're making sure we're aware of it, but let's make sure, right, that we're truly understanding confidentiality visions in any software that we're using before we use it. Training and ethical use. This is it. Right? The Georgia Bar recommends that you all receive training on how to use AI ethically. I hope they think I'm doing that. Duty of communication. It's covered in the duty of confidentiality because, interestingly, this state bar did not write guidance on the duty of communication, right? They kept that guidance hidden in the confidentiality guidance, but they don't have separate guidance for Rule 1.4, which talks about how we're supposed to communicate with our client. I look at the last one. Most importantly, right, a lawyer shall explain a matter to the extent reasonably necessary to permit the client to make informed decisions regarding the representation, right? And I think that's where the AI guidance comes in, which is that it is our responsibility to come back and have that conversation. Rule 2.1. Rule 2.1, in representing a client, the lawyer shall exercise independent professional judgment and render candid advice. The lawyer should not be deterred from giving candid advice for the prospect that the advice will be unpalatable to the client. The lawyer's professional judgment cannot be delegated to generative AI. So the box quote is Rule 2.1. The bullets are Randy. Right, so the bullets, we cannot, right? It is our job as a lawyer to render professional judgment and provide candid advice to our clients. We cannot delegate our legal and ethical responsibility to utilize our own professional judgment to AI, right? That eliminates our thinking, autonomy, our advice, what we think is right. There's a lot of pieces of information we know that are not necessarily being input. There are a lot of biases that come out of ChatGPT that we're not necessarily accounting for. We have to approach this from our years of experience, our expertise, our training, and provide our own advice. We may not replace our own independent professional judgment with arguments or conclusions from generative AI tools that do not account for the client's best interest. Right? Moves us to, again, those were my commentary. Candor to the tribunal. The lawyer shall not knowingly. There are a lot of things we shall not knowingly do, but make false statements of material fact or law to a tribunal. Fail to disclose a material fact, fail to disclose legal authority and controlling jurisdiction known to the lawyer, be directly adverse to the position, and then offer evidence, right? So the ones that are really relevant, what does this look like? guidance from the state bar, accuracy of our briefing, of our legal authority, whether we write it in a motion, whether we write it in a brief, whether we speak it out loud, it is essential that the information that we provide is accurate. And risk of hallucinations is one issue, and it is the most commonly reported on issue. It is the issue that is easiest for us to find and talk about, laugh about. But the bullets are also important, right? So I'm going to go in reverse order. Disclosure of adverse legal authority, right? ChatGPT is not that great at, right? We're looking for that. We're knowing that that's the thing we have to do. But it is essential for us to go through the legal research process, not just to read the two cases that get spit out by generative AI, but to read all of the relevant cases to figure out if there are some that go the other way. Risk of misrepresentation. So part of this, right, and I'll throw out my own experience. I have never asked ChatGPT to do a legal research thing for me. We did this when I presented to the Southern Youth Defender Center, last year's regional summit. We did one live. We asked somebody to throw out a problem for us, and we typed it in live, and we asked it to draft a brief or a motion. And in the motion, there was a hallucinated case, right? So we saw live, there was a hallucinated case. But it kind of got a framework that was pretty good if you then read the cases and worked it out. I have not done that, other than that live experiment. What I have done is, I had an issue that I really just didn't know the answer to and couldn't find. Like I just couldn't find an answer because I think it was a question of first impression. And the problem for me with ChatGPT, or in my case, I use Westlaw AI, because I would not ever, right? Because ChatGPT doesn't have, like, Westlaw AI is not going to hallucinate cases. Like, it's actually pulling out real cases. Question. And then because I'm not really good at this technology thing, I couldn't figure out how to go back to my answer. So I knew, like, I read it, but then I couldn't figure out where it saves, and I couldn't figure out how to get it again. So I typed in the question. I thought the same way, but I changed maybe like 4 words because I didn't write my question down. And it approached, and then I figured out how to find my old answers, and I compared that. And it approached the question entirely differently. Like, and literally I changed 4 words, but not in my mind the meaning of my question at all. In my mind, I was asking the exact same. And it approached it entirely differently, and neither of them got to the answer that I was like. Neither of them got to like the gist of the question. And the reason that's true is because my question didn't have an answer. And so, like, obviously, if the question has an answer, I know how to. Like, I don't need ChatGPT. Like, I don't need generative AI when I know the answer to my question. But I was trying to get some creative answers of how to look at it, and it truly went off in 2 different, disparate, disconnected ways that it was essential for me to read all of the things it cited, figure out how to merge them, and cross all the stuff that was irrelevant, right? And so that's my cautionary tale of, like, if I just took what it told me and presented it, I think I would have answered the wrong question, right? And so, like, the risk of misrepresentation of what we're doing, of its analysis, legal thought process is high because it doesn't actually, like, it's not thinking, like, it's sort of compiling things that weren't there. Right, which goes us to automated legal drafting. If we're used for drafting legal documents, we must ensure the content is consistent with the law, not misrepresent facts or the law. They may lack nuanced understanding of a human lawyer, which could lead to inaccuracies or omissions, right? Which was my experience entirely with my one experiment with Westlaw. We must be able to explain how and why we reached a legal, right? And this is where I think maybe not our trial court judges, although perhaps some of them, but certainly our Court of Appeals and Supreme Court judges, right? When you cite something and when you say something, and they ask you how you got there and what your reasoning and theory is, the answer can't be because ChatGPT says so. Because that's not a good answer. Shockingly, like that's what when my students use model documents, and I have a database. They can use model documents, but I tell them 100% of the time when they walk into my office, and I say, "Why did you include that case? And why is that paragraph there?" They have to be able to answer that, and the answer cannot be because it was in the model document. Same thing applies to ChatGPT. Like we have to understand it. You can use it as your base tool to start the process. But you then have to think through it and understand it and do additional research on it and come to the same legal conclusion or a different legal conclusion all on your own. Which goes back to my hypo, right? I'm going to bring us right back here. So let's start with box one. I upload the client case file to ChatGPT. Can I do it?
No.
Not unredacted, for sure. Certainly not without taking other steps, right? So if it's a non-confidential, like non-privileged information, maybe I could do it if I have a conversation with my client and I get their permission, right? So let's say, because it's easier for me to think as a defense attorney, let's say I'm an adult defense attorney with a publicly available police report. Should I upload that to ChatGPT? I wouldn't, but if my client says, hey, if you will represent me better by uploading all of these police reports and autopsy reports and victim statements to ChatGPT, I will give you permission to do that. And it's a publicly available document. I think you can. I wouldn't, but I think you can, right? But certainly not, right? Those of us who are representing juveniles, those of us who are representing state agencies where juveniles are involved. Certainly, if you represent a state agency and your client is not the juvenile who's involved, you should not be able to do this, right? You should not be able to, right? Your client does not get to give you permission to upload somebody else's private confidential information, right? So we have to think about all of those things. I asked it to draft a picture express and supporting brief. Can I ask ChatGPT to write a brief and a motion for me?
Yes.
Absolutely. I can absolutely ask it to write a brief and a motion for me. Can I stop there? No. Yeah, no, we cannot stop there. Right. The purple box gets us in trouble when we stop there. Right. So we can do some things, but we have to do them ourselves, right? We have to go behind the scenes on the legal side and make sure we have client protections on the confidentiality side. So what do I think, right? Right. This is my like closing thoughts as we go through this with a couple of 10 minutes for the questions. Use AI to enhance, not replace your expertise. Always fact check and verify. It's ideal for brainstorming, possibly first drafts, although I don't like using it for first drafts. Summarization. My problem with first drafts is that I get stuck in somebody else's draft, right? So I like to write my own things. Not for a final legal output. So here's this fine line, right? First drafts, I like to write my own thing. If you get ChatGPT to redraft your thing, because you're like, hey, make this sound better. Make sure you are using, right? I think Lori will get to some of this, enough guideposts in your prompting that it is not changing your document and changing the meaning of what you are doing. right? And so you want to make sure that it redlines what you've done. It does a bad job of that, by the way. I asked it to redline my document once. I was doing something simple and really in preparation for a training. And I asked it to redline my document, and it redlined the first page. And I was like, how about redlining the second, third, fourth, and fifth pages too? Because it didn't do that. Like, it just stopped redlining my document. So again, make sure you're using your guideposts, make sure you safeguards, fail safes, that if you're having it review your document, you're truly understanding what it's changed. Use your separate tools, use Word to do redlining comparisons. Don't rely on ChatGPT itself. To the extent that you can use secure tools, use them whenever possible. And then obviously staying informed about ethical guidelines, court rules. I think Gloria has in her materials. Many of our trial courts are issuing court standing orders that require you to disclose if you have used AI in any of the drafting of any of the documents that you are submitting to them. So know whether your court has a rule on that. So if you're using it, you can submit it. So with that, right, those are my takeaways. What have you all found to be the best, most effective use of AI? And this is what's going to transition right into Lori. And I'll tell you some of the things that I've done now.
I'd like to just say it bluntly and then ask ChatGPT, will you clean this up, make it more professional?
Okay. So in like legal briefs and writing, or in like
Emails, legal briefs?
Yeah. I think emails is a great use for, right, help me fix this email. I don't fix the tabs I have right now.
Randy, make sure you repeat the question back.
So the question, the thought was, I say it bluntly, and I ask ChatGPT to fix it up and make it nice. Right, where I would write, it'll be an asshole email, like, I'm really mad right now, ChatGPT, fix this, put better words, make it sound more professional. You can tell it how you want it to sound. So that's one use. What else?
I've used it for just like if I've written a sentence that I know is just too wordy.
Yeah.
And just ask it to rework it a little bit to keep the tone, like not to change the tone or anything.
Yep.
No, I have done that. But I'm looking at it and I know it's a run-on sentence, and I know we have a little more leeway in our motions and appellate briefs, but you still know it's just too wonky or whatever. So I've done that where I only highlight that one sentence, run-on sentence, or maybe two sentences, just that, and rework it. And that's worked out really well.
Yeah, so input a sentence or two from your whatever written product you're doing and ask it to, hey, I know this sentence is wrong. Like, I know this sentence is factually correct, but grammatically wrong, and it runs on by this sentence. Can you keep the same idea, same concept, same practicality of it, but simplify this sentence? Yeah. All right. These are we're in the Randy side of touch, tip, dip, and toes in ChatGPT going on. Other ideas?
I use it for additional pointers. It's always good about giving you some additional insight on things you may not have thought about.
Yeah. So give me an example of like what type of like. So Ira uses it for brainstorming for additional pointers to things he hasn't thought about. So I'll give an example. Cross-examination. ChatGPT. The municipality I'm practicing in has the following standard operating procedure. In my case, the police officers did X. Please help me draft a cross-examination with respect to their failure to follow the standard operating procedure. Is it a perfect cross-examination? Absolutely not. But does it come up with some questions I didn't think of myself the first time I did that? You bet it is. That is, for me, its truest and best use is brainstorming.
Exactly.
Right? Whatever types of things. I was working on a policy project where we're trying to write definitions for some like tool. And I put into ChatGPT what we were looking for, how we were trying to define it, and my goodness, it did a great job. And like the group I was working with struggled with it for an hour. And like in 3 minutes, it gave us our starting point that we could refine and rectify and you know, and make better. But those to me are brainstorming is for me my sweet spot of what ChatGPT is all about. There are better uses, I'm sure, for others, but for me, that's my sweet spot.
Yeah, I think for me, brainstorming and then structuring
Yeah.
what I want to say. And then also I use it a lot to, you know, kind of be like, this is what I'm thinking, challenge me.
Yeah.
You know, and then kind of see what the, you know, different things that kind of comes up in response.
Yeah, so those are a couple of, right, so Jill's thoughts were restructuring, right? So it's actually, because it's trained to write, the way like we train grammatically correct, thinking, writing, right? Here's what I have. Can you structure this so that it makes logical sense, so that it flows, so that things happen, right? You can ask it to write an outline for you to help create that flow. Yeah, and you're going to play with it. You're going to restructure it. You're going to think about it, but it's definitely good at that. And then I've written the following, again, confidentiality in mind, right? Challenge me on my thoughts, on my thesis, on my theories, right? Challenge what I have done. What's the opposing side? What am I missing? And what are the contrary points of view? All great pieces.
Then also,
one more from Jill, and then I'm going to take whatever 4 minutes of questions.
sorry, the other thing I think I have to add is like how to communicate things to different audiences.
Yep.
And how to simplify
Yep. concepts. Yeah, communication to different audiences is a great one, right? So I have this document, tailor this document or this message, whether it's a document or not, to a professional audience. Tailor this document to a group of child welfare practicing professionals. Tailor this to a group of high school students. Tailor this, right? You can, and it will modify your, right? And again, check its content. Sure, it hasn't changed your meaning, but really, like, it's really good at this. All right, questions?
People are done online.
What, so we do some, I work for Atlanta Legal Aid and Help. We do some special education advocacy, and I'm always worried about this, not so much lawyer use of AI because I'm afraid, but I'm feeling better after today, but student use of AI, them getting targeted for using AI in their, and maybe sometimes it's just Grammarly, which is, as I learned today, is not actually generative AI, but they get flagged for that and get disciplined for that.
Yes.
So can you talk a little bit about, as it probably applies not just to students, but to lawyers, software that's out there flagging people for using AI when they're not supposed to be?
So I'll do two things, right? One, because I also do special education work. One, we should not have AI generated IEPs. I'll stop there. We should not have AI generated. Right. So what I can tell you is the research is great as we're defending students who've been charged with use of AI. The research is great, and that stuff is bugs. Like that it does not actually do a good job of identifying whether something is AI produced or not. There are some hints. Obviously, if somebody leaves their prompt bad, they have used AI. That's from personal experience. I have seen that submitted with. But they like so the answer is we have to actually educate educators around the fact that these Turnitin softwares, that's the one that's auto populated in the program that we use at Emory, they do not detect AI, right? Somebody who is writing completely 100% on their own will get flagged for that. But we also have to educate educators to write their rules properly. Right, what does your syllabus say, or your school policy say about AI? Can you use Grammarly? An IEP, assistive technology accommodation, allows the use of talk-to-text software. It allows the use of Grammarly. It allows the use of word prediction, right? So if we're truly doing special education students, let's make sure we stick in the IEP that they can use all of those things.
Sometimes they won't put it in the IEP.
Yeah, well, so ask them for an assistive technology evaluation, and then it'll have to be in there. But I mean, challenge its lack, because if it's related to their disability, then they have to use it. So I've run out of time, but Lori has a whole hour and a half to talk about practical uses, where we can talk about these more, and I'll happy to chat more. But I'm also doing this exact same for AL, Carolina Legal Aid's University.
We're so happy because you're gonna get great questions from.
What are the good?
Well,
Let's give Randy a round of applause. We're going to take a 15-minute break for everybody online. We will be back right at 12:30. So we'll be back in 15 minutes. Very much. The afternoon session is titled Using Artificial Intelligence in Juvenile Law, Opportunities, Ethics, and Practical Applications. And the presentation or presenter for this session is Lori Thomas Williams. Lori is a business owner, mentor, speaker, advocate, mediator, and arbiter. Her greatest accomplishment is being a wife, a mother of 4 young women, 4 bonus sons, a foster son, and proud Gaga, 2 grandbabies. She started her legal career in Savannah, Georgia, where while there, she was a founding member of the Chatham County Juvenile Bar Association, provides support and advocacy to fellow juvenile court practitioners. She currently serves as chair of the Child Protection Section Board of the State Bar of Georgia. She also served on the executive committee for over 12 years. She's also very active in the community and serves as a mentor, Will's Clinic, and other legal clinics participant, resources drives, and president of Atlanta Young Sisters. In October 2019, she joined with her law school classmate and formed Reed Thomas Law Group LLC, and is now managing partner at Reed Thomas Law Group, located in Conyers, Georgia. Her current practice areas are personal injury, business law, juvenile law, GAL work, ADR, and civil litigation. She also serves as a pro tem judge in Rockdale County as well. Let's welcome Lori Thomas Williams. Thank you very much.
So before we kind of talk about artificial intelligence in law, I kind of want to talk to you about something a little bit more dangerous. New technology. Because every generation thinks that their new is the one that's finally gone too far. So let me walk you through the evolution of tech as experienced by one very hard working individual. As you guys know, I actually got this. I borrowed this idea from that I saw when I was introduced to generative AI, and I thought to myself, this is a great way to think about this, right? Like way back when we were using, of course, the donkey, the plow, and the person. Low hard work, low efficiency, and of course, that's zero Wi-Fi. And yes, AI did generate that for me. And in the fields, when you were in the fields with the donkey, the donkey got sick, you had no backup plan. If it rained, work stopped. If we wanted groceries, you grew them or you starved. Technology didn't make us weaker, it gave us our weekends. Fast forward to the invention of the, combustion engine. People they came along and same human, bigger engine, still no Wi-Fi, of course, at that time. But people used to say, tractors will destroy farming. No one will know how to plow anymore. What if the tractor makes a mistake? Spoiler alert, we still eat. Tractor didn't decide what to plant. It just stopped us from throwing our backs out. Then we said, I don't want to drive anymore. And suddenly strangers named Carlos knew our home address. And yet society has still survived. And I'm still deciding where I'm going. The app is just getting me there faster. And on occasion, via a scenic route, I didn't reflect. And this is something else that you kind of think about when we talk about kind of the evolution of things. How many of you in this room said, well, I'm not putting my credit card information online. There's no way I'm doing that. It's going to get stolen. By show of hands, how many of y'all did that? Right? And how many of y'all now have an Amazon account, Walmart account, or something else with a one-click buy and your credit card information being stored online, right? That's pretty much everybody in the room.
Right.
So if we look at technology in this way, right? At this point, I don't have to grow the food. I don't have to drive to get there. I just tap a screen and hope the shopper understands that organic bananas are not a lifestyle preference, but a moral stand, right? And it didn't remove the responsibility. The technology didn't. It just gave me more time to argue about it. So here's the pattern. Now, here's the other one, right? This is a new technology where I can now clone myself. I can clone my face. I can clone my voice. If I were to actually show the video, you would hear me speaking. I didn't do a TEDx talk. I wish I did one, but I didn't do a TEDx talk. But this put me in the room, making it seem as if I had done a TEDx talk, right? Like I've got a whole audience and all the things and everything else, right? And here's the pattern. Every time technology advances, humans panic. And every time humans adapt and remain. And we're here, we're here not with stronger arms, because we're not plowing anymore, not with faster cars, but we're here with tools that can write and sound intelligent. And so today we're going to go over a couple of things. We're going to go over a couple of things on this agenda. And one of the things I want you to kind of keep in mind is, why does this scare us? Why does assisted technology, why generative technology, why does it scare us? Because, the first time that this is not the first time that we've used technology, right? It's the first time that we kind of see it kind of touching cognition and what we as humans have always been able to do. And that's what scares us, right? But the truth is, it didn't suddenly give us judgment. It didn't suddenly give us ethics, and it didn't suddenly give us responsibilities. Those were always ours. So the donkey never decided where to plow. Tractor didn't decide what to plant. The Uber driver or Uber app didn't decide where I live. And Instacart doesn't decide what I eat. And AI should never decide what happens to a child or a family. So tools have changed, but responsibility has not. So you've heard Randy kind of talk about ethics and what our obligations are there. And so one of the, couple of things to kind of point out for you guys is, and it's kind of laid out a little bit more carefully in my paper as well, is that, juvenile law is a special place in the law, right? We don't do things the same way that they do in other places. We don't have the same missions that the other courts do. Juvenile laws are typically, all right, the mission of those is rehabilitative. We stress we stressed the heightened risk to children, sealing records by always kind of focusing on the best interest standard of children. And so AI should never be considered as something in juvenile law that will replace our responsibility to to make sure that we are in the process of making decisions for children and their families. So I talked about the rehabilitative and best interest factors. We also have a heightened duty of confidentiality. I won't belabor that point. Randy did a wonderful job in kind of going through those. We have like I said, vulnerable parties in that we are dealing with, not just the children, but their families as well. And it does require trauma-informed advocacy. And while AI can definitely be a tool to help us stay focused, it should not replace our thought process. And then we also, in our aspect that some of the other areas of law don't cover, is a collaboration that kind of happens, right? How collaboration with social workers, with psychologists, with educators, with other community partners and leaders. Those are the things that make juvenile law so unique. I meant to say this earlier, but I am open to questions throughout my presentation. So if anybody has a question about anything or whatever, just raise your hand or put it in the chat, and I'm happy to stop and kind of provide those answers. And so as to the best of my abilities. Now, Randy says I am, what was it, the AI, whatever.
I'll be on this side.
Yeah, she's on this side of the AI, and she's on this side of AI, like learning and that kind of thing. And I do not profess at all to be an AI like genius or any of those kinds of things. I regularly do take like classes on like AI use and what I can, and to find out what I can use, you know, like generative AI for. And I've actually been, as you can see, playing around a lot with AI when it comes to like advertising, marketing, things like that, and use it very regularly in my law practice, and have AI policies and procedures in place for our staff members and their responsible use in our office as well for AI, because I think it is irresponsible of me as an attorney to believe that my staff member who might want to get out the door at 5 o'clock and has to get me a motion so that I can review it and get it filed by the deadline, or whatever, is not going to potentially turn to generative AI to try to get things done a little bit faster. So we have a policy in place to try to make sure that that happens. And so this is a reminder to those. I know a lot of juvenile practitioners, because of how unique our area is, a lot of times we work alone, we work solo, but sometimes we do have staff. And the duty of competency also requires that we have to be able to monitor what our staff is doing and how our staff is utilizing technology and those kinds of things as well. So this is just a reminder to make sure that when you are looking at, adding some of these things into your practice, make sure that you are creating for yourself, that you kind of follow policies and procedures, maybe even a checklist that you put in place for your staff to follow, and make sure that they are not, and then kind of do some random checks. I'll go through and show you kind of how I do some of that in my ChatGPT platform, and some things that I learned within the last week doing some AI business things that I had no clue that you could do. And so the AI landscape in terms of general uses, and Randy kind of went through some of this, is that predictive modeling. Some people are using it for case management, or case management, and that's stuff like automating deadline tracking and task management and things of that nature, drafting and summarizing things, and research and analysis. I know I use a practice management software that literally just rolled out AI into the practice management software. And we did a kind of a preliminary, I did a preliminary, look into it to kind of see. And it was kind of scary because, again, this is a practice management software that I'm utilizing. I've paid my money to, and it's now brought in AI. I have to buy this additional service, but it's now brought in AI. And AI is now reading, and it's amazing some of the stuff it could do. I tried it on an order that's public, that was already public facing, and it read the dates in the order and pulled out the deadlines, like the next coming court date, and put it, and then asked me, did I want to add it to my calendars right there? Like, I didn't have to have an extra assistant to make that happen. Like, it did it. And I thought, this is kind of like, this is actually pretty cool. And then it also pulled out deadlines that the court had set inside of the order as well to have, you know, for DFACs to have case plans, for example. You know, I didn't upload a child welfare order. I'm just giving you examples. But for DFACs to have like a, you know, to have the case plan within 10 days filed before the next court date or something like that, it pulled out those things and asked me, do I want to add them to my calendar as a deadline, right? Or to, you know, to kind of trigger me that to look for that document. You know, right now I'm doing that stuff manually because I'm not utilizing the AI in that fashion. But that is one of those kind of general, right? That anybody who does law and does that kind of stuff, that's kind of a general use. It definitely is good for drafting of motions, of briefs and summarizing documents, research and analysis to a point. And we'll go into that a little bit as later. And then for juvenile court, where I kind of see some of these are like best case uses of what I could see happening in juvenile court with these. So trial prep from different perspectives. There's some of that that already can definitely happen right now. So that's stuff like using vague descriptors to help create and prepare materials, right? Draft a motion, draft a timeline, and these are some dates that I want to put in the timeline without putting in our, you know, anything, you know, any descriptors of what's happening in that family and things of that nature. Draft juvenile motions. And then for the judges, draft the accompanying order, right? Draft the motion. Here's all the wonderful things. And also it'll usually prompt you, do you want me to draft a proposed order? Yes. Right? And download it and massage it and make it all the things and put all the things that you need to have in there. And whatnot, and the findings and everything else. Usually if you put enough information in, it'll do a lot of this. Scheduling and deadlines, like I said, some of this stuff is not stuff that you want to do because depending on how you input the information, you want to be careful about how you input the information, but it can definitely do scheduling and deadlines. Like I can't tell you as a parent attorney how many times I have had to contact my client, and as a court appointed parent attorney sometimes, how much my bill has grown just from trying to contact my client, right? But if I've got in my system built in my practice management system like that, I could set it to send automated reminders, automated text messages, all of those things. Now I'm not billing for that, so I do lose that time on my billing sheet. But I'm sorry, I'd rather do something else than than try to track down my client and send emails. And, I'd rather let the automated system do that kind of stuff and focus on the stuff that matters the most to the case, right? Interviewing witnesses, being prepared, reading reports, things like that. Chatbots and guidance. So there are, I see in the future, maybe there being, an ability to provide or build at some point a chatbot for dealing with DFACs to understand what the rules are, right? I think that's, we always say that knowledge is power. Like I pulled the DFACs manual the other day. It was 1,900 pages, the one that was recently updated. I'm sorry, but as a practitioner, I don't know everything that's in there, right? How do we even expect parents to know everything that's in there? That's just the manual. That's not Georgia law on this issue. That's not the rules of, the rules of evidence. That's not all the other things that kind of go into it. And so, maybe there's a use for it in the future of creating a chatbot that only relies on these verified sources that parents can come in and ask some, specific questions to be able to get guidance of, well, here's a resource that you can read. And out of these 1,900 pages, here's the resource that matters to you or that's relevant to this question. And then policy and law reform. So ability to kind of, I see that this is more of a future, kind of a future thing that I think, if it's not already happening in some organizations, is the ability to look at, data and to be able to synthesize for us kind of systemic changes that are kind of happening in juvenile law, right? We already have data points about how many kids are coming to foster. We already have data points about how many kids are exiting foster care. You know, and like I think about it from a perspective of a couple years ago, the Supreme Court required there to be changes on the domestic and the civil initiation forms that happen in Superior State Court, as well as the disposition forms. And so now they track data points like, did you use ADR in your process, right? And now they have that like data point. And it, you know, and from my understanding, there's more money being put than into ADR programs across the state, because they now can track that data point to say, well, this is actually helping a case, you know, that gets open close faster, or, you know, a child, you know, we're thinking about futuristically a child being able to go home sooner, because maybe we're tracking on the front end where services offered. Is there like a form that can be collected where services offered, you know, to the family before coming into foster care? Like, is there, you know, is that, and I don't know if that's being tracked already, but if that is, like, feeding that into the model to say on the back end, is there like a disposition form that's then tracking what services were used to be able to say, okay, these are how we recognize and identify trends to move things along. It's spitballing things I've thought about at 12 o'clock in the morning. And so, of course, benefits to utilizing AI, of course, it's going to accelerate your drafting in some cases. It's going to help you with research and administrative tasks with cautions. It will, and already has. And if you have talked to any of your clients, by show of hands, how many people talk to folks in their practice that say, I check with ChatGPT and it said, when you are doing a juvenile law case? That's pretty much everybody, right? And so it is actually creating more access and equity. I tell people all the time, like, I do our firm does civil litigation. And what I see in trends is a case that might be worth $10,000 or $12,000. By the time the client hires me to pursue that case, like a breach of contract case, by the time the client is me to pursue that, they're already $10,000 or $12,000 in the hole on that, right? So they really can't afford me to continue to represent them. And so now they're doing it or going alone, right? Or they are losing the right to pursue that. But now that they have a tool like ChatGPT, a lot of times what I'll find is they are not coming to me for those small cases. They're working with ChatGPT to work on the statement of claim to take the case to magistrate court instead of taking it to the next level. And they're having access, a little bit more access then to the courts, a little bit more access to actually, bring their cases. I don't know how many people saw, there was a guy, Randy didn't point this one out. He was a pro se litigant, but he went up to like the Court of Appeals in New York or something. And he had filed like a motion for his like AI. He had filed a motion for somebody to have, right? Something, right? And so he gets he's standing in front of the podium, in front of the judges, a panel of judges, and he presses the play button or whatever that, whatever he does, right? And this person comes on, or that looks like a person, and the court's like asking questions, and the bot is like, this person is answering the questions of the court. And at some point, the judge went, hold on, is that a real person? And the guy said, no, that's not a real person. This is my AI chatbot that I created to speak for me, right? Because I have difficulty speaking in public settings. I have high anxiety. And I felt like I needed to have somebody speak for me. And I fed all my information and my answers and stuff into the chatbot, but I just needed to speak for me. And the judge, of course, lost their minds. As you can imagine, they lost their minds and they were like, absolutely not. Turn that thing off. You cannot use that. I'm not sure how the rest of his case went. That's kind of where I stopped following it. But that's, but again, when I think about access to justice, or I think about access to the courts, right? Like when we talk, Randy just talked about making sure that accessibility technology was in IEP plans. why are we as the courts also not making sure that accessibility technology is available for people who want to self-represent? And they have high levels of anxiety or any of those kinds of things. And I think that we're going to start seeing some of those things happen, right? It'll eventually happen. Everybody said, we won't have court. That'll never happen. You gotta be in person, butts in seats. And what happened with COVID? We all adjusted, right? And some courts continue to go that route today. And other courts are like, no, we're going back to the old way, right? And so again, like, you know, there are ways that we can kind of do technology. I do think that there is some, you can get technology that's accurate, and there can be some accuracy to the technology. It can help us kind of with trauma-informed practices, right? If you're not sure about what trauma-informed practices are, there are a lot of resources out there, right? There's all these public journals that Psychology Today has published about trauma-informed this and trauma that. And all that stuff is on the internet, right? So are you going to go out and read 1,000 articles on trauma-informed on Psychology Today? Or are you going to go into chat and say, can you give me some ideas of what trauma-informed therapy look like, and maybe give me some resources to check out, kind of narrow down where I need to look at this particular area. You're going to use it like almost like you do a search engine, right? But you can have more of a conversation with ChatGPT than you can you used to be able to do in just a general search engine. And then I already talked about the data-driven decision. And then I do want to point out, and I put this in my I put this in my material. There are some courts out there that have issued, and I want you guys to be aware of, AI orders. I found two. I think there are three at this point, that at least that I know of. One is in Douglas County Juvenile Court. The other is Fulton County Superior Court, but there's also a Fulton County Juvenile Court order on AI, where you are having to actually disclose the use of AI when you draft documents. Those orders, I think, are part of my material, so you can definitely check those out for yourself and get, you know, the information there. And so, you know, one of the things that I kind of looked at when I thought about this was, like, AI is in so much stuff, right? Thankfully, they did kind of clarify in the orders and said, like, generative AI. And so that's helpful. Actually, I will actually put one of them on the screen for you. I have it up.
Well, we do the Douglas County one, because it says more than that. I was gonna ask Randy about it, but I'm trying not to.
So there's a Douglas County order in juvenile court, and so it says here, like, whereas the use of generative AI, for example, ChatGPT, co-counsel, creates a risk of security of confidentiality of confidential information, including the identification of children and so forth and so on. And talks about legal citations. It talks about no confidential or sensitive information should be disclosed when using generative AI programs. And so I wanted to show this because, like, you know, not only do we have our, like, Randy talked about the ethics, but we now have orders that are potentially affecting how we practice law as well, right? And how we're doing things in juvenile court. But they're also, like, to point out to you as well, like, Adobe, how many of y'all, by show of hands, and I already know the answer to this, use Adobe to look at court orders? Adobe has generative AI in it, right? You have to click a button, right, to allow it. But how many times have y'all opened Adobe and it popped up and said, I can summarize this for you? And you're like, man, this is 1900 pages. That would be great to get a summary. What you're doing is you're giving permission for the AI, the generative AI, to look at that document and pull information out of that document. And you've got to be really careful about that. So that was one of the things that when I read these orders, I was like, oh my gosh, this is like, you know, this is great, but like, what other, I mean, you know, there are other PDF tools out there that you can look at that don't have all of that stuff kind of baked into it, but Adobe has baked that into their software now. And you have to be, you do have to specifically give it permission, but you need to be clear, because again, competency is one of those things that we have to all be, you know, we have to be competent when we're handling cases. And so you may not have violated a bar rule necessarily, right? By opening and saying, yeah, summarize this for me. But if you were practicing in Douglas County, if you didn't do the certification, or you accidentally uploaded some sensitive information because you clicked the button and you didn't realize that it was generative AI, you've now violated this order as well. So you need to be very careful in those instances. And again, I don't know if this is what I don't know if this is what the judge meant by, hey, don't use, generative AI, don't upload sensitive information or whatever else. It's just right now if you've activated Copilot on your computer, that's generative AI. So if you're opening client files on your computer with Copilot, you are now exposing your client files to confidential, to this, right? To uploading sensitive information. And so you've got to be really careful. The same thing if you use Copilot in your emails. How many of us actually get most of our orders via email nowadays in the juvenile courts? Right? It's most of us. That's now what we've evolved. We don't get papers and orders anymore. Like we don't carry, well, some of us don't carry around paper files anymore, right? I have to clarify that because my law partner very much carries around paper files and I try to avoid it at all costs. That came from like 10 years of having to shred 10 years worth of files at one point. And I was like, never again. But again, all of these things, are things that we've got to be very careful and aware of. So let me go back to Amber. Did I answer your question just trying to get this up and kind of talk about it a little bit?
My concern was I think you did kind of touch on where it says must contain a certification that the document has been independently reviewed. Now I haven't said anything yet. I don't know there's so much I had to pick my battles, but I don't know. I don't know what independently reviewed by who, me, or am I supposed to send it to, it's just kind of wonky. So what my question was going to be earlier, what made me think about it is, are there any superior court standing orders like Zoom, like where you talked about when we were in that age of Zoom, that said certain things, or if there are any higher powers than Douglas County Juvenile Court judge telling me I need to do that kind of maybe take precedent, or I don't want to use that word.
So I just put this is the Fulton County Superior Court order on artificial intelligence, and it pretty much mirrors the Douglas County order. I'm not sure if the judges got together and said we think this is great language, or brainstorm the language for some of these that are kind of coming out.
I'm sorry for you. So messy.
That they use AI. Jill, and I'm sorry, hold on one second. Amber's question was if there was a superior court order or something else that would provide some additional guidance or additional examples or support or clarification even.
Just that has more teeth to we have to. I'm not saying I don't have to follow the juvenile court judge's order, but is this
not saying that you don't have to follow?
You're right. I'm not saying that. Let me be clear. I was just wondering if there was something above and beyond that has, and I think you have answered that yeah, it does sound like some of this is trickling down from superior courts to tell us to do this.
Yeah, we have Jill, who staff attorney.
Yeah, so I think this is happening all over the country in all classes of courts. You could probably find federal district courts and different things doing things on it, as well as superior courts and juvenile courts. But my thinking is, and I don't know, I wasn't in Douglas Court, or I didn't have anything to do with the drafting of these two orders. But my guess is that language about independent review is just saying that the staff, that the attorney signing the pleading is guaranteeing that they have independently reviewed the cases and all of that. So they're certifying that, these are actual cases. These aren't AI generated cases.
Verification like a verification that.
Yeah, I mean, it's just you're certifying, verifying that if you used AI, you fact checked it.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what Jill said was basically that she's is that she's seeing kind of a trend across the country of kind of this happening and courts kind of requiring a, you know, certification of some sort that if you're using a generative AI, that you're fact checking more than anything else.
Yeah, and it's really, if you think about it, it's just a certification that you're complying with your ethical duties that are required of you anyway, right? Like,
So she just said that for those online, that basically certification that you're complying with it. And I will say that like one of the things I recently did something in federal court, and I hadn't practiced in federal court in years and years and years, and like they require like a certification of word count, right? You have to certify that you were within the word count of so forth and so on. And I don't see it any differently than that, right? So this is the court saying, if you're signing this pleading that you were saying to us that you did not use generative AI. And I think what'll be interesting is whether or not like case managers actually put this certification when they sign the complaint for, you know, like, cause this is an order again for like, if you look at the order, it doesn't say only attorneys. It says if you're filing documents in the court, like you have to say, or probation officers making that certification on those documents, right? As well as, you know, like the SAG coming back and, you know, utilizing that as well, and making that certification pleadings. And then I think there's going to, you know, depending on how many more courts that kind of adopt this kind of language, then what happens if the certification is not there? Are we filing a motion for contempt against DFACs? I mean, I know you guys, some of you guys in this room probably like the idea of that, right? But you know, like, are we, you know, like, what are we doing? Like, what's the teeth here? What happens if that doesn't happen? Can we argue that, you know, that might have happened with a petition for dependency and ask that the dependency be struck? And kids go home. You know, I mean, I think there's there's definitely a managed, way to handle that.
Lori, this is Ashley. I'm sorry, I'm on
have, and it
virtually. I just wanted
went
to
up on
mention.
appeal. It didn't, it was a petition that wasn't verified by the SAG. And it was Judge Crawford. He was upheld. The Court of Appeals sent it back for the SAG to do the verification, but it said it wasn't a fatal flaw in the filing.
Okay.
That was last year.
Okay.
yeah,
So, hold on one second. So for the people online, what Amber Walden was expressing was that it was a case that went on appeal because the SAG apparently didn't verify a petition, and it went up on appeal, and it ended up coming back. The court basically, you know, said, "Hey, look, correct this defect."
yeah, so that's basically right. But like, yeah. But when you know an attorney is submitting a pleading to the court that requires verification, you know, it's like you're verifying what is in the pleading is true or what you reasonably believe to be accurate. And yeah, I mean, I guess if you don't do that, then the remedy would be for defects to be it's a curable defect, but it's, you know, it's a requirement. Really rooted in due process and notice and the opportunity to be heard and, you know, and candor to the courts and all, you know, there's very many things, I guess, that go into that.
I don't know if I can relay all of that back to the online world, Jill, but what the gist of it is just that there are some ethical duties, there are some other duties that are kind of are incumbent on a verified pleading, for example, that you are verifying that the information that's there, or you're having your client verify that there is true and accurate. And there's some due process concerns that kind of go into that kind of thing. Again, I'm a civil litigator, so I'm looking at it from a perspective of like, the order says you can be sanctioned. I want sanctions, and I'm going to file a motion to strike all your pleadings because you didn't verify whatever. Or it wasn't like, it didn't show up in your you didn't have a certification saying that either you didn't use AI or you independently verified your use of AI in that pleading, in that court. I do not practice in either of those courts, by the way. So, and I'm not telling you guys to go do that because I don't want judges coming for me. But if it's appropriate, obviously, if the court is going to hold you as a practitioner to that standard, then I think that the court, and put out an order like this, I think the court does have to be even-handed with how they're applying that standard to practitioners. It has to be applied to probation officers. It has to be applied to the case managers. It has to be applied to all people. Because as we all know, a lot of times, this stuff is, like the technology is getting more and more advanced. And like I just read earlier, how like police officers are uploading like their video cam footage to the generative AI apps, and it's providing then transcripts and then a summary report that goes into police reports now from the transcripts of their body cam. And how long before an agency with a large deficit and waning manpower starts to utilize something like that to start to kind of cut out people, the human element, and police officers are required to still review those reports, right? But how long before we start to get into that in some other state agencies or governmental agencies that then say, like they're doing that. And so we need to be very careful about making sure that, like maybe we ask the question when we have the case manager on the stand at FPPH and say, did you use any generative AI to assist with preparing the summary that you provided to the court for this PPH, to take to remove the children? And did you independently verify that summary before you submitted it to the court? And especially if their signature is missing and you're in a county that has an order that says that they have to do that. And I think that that's, something that it helps to, it's not to go aha moment to the DFACS work, case manager, but but I think at the end of the day, right? Like I talked about, like the donkey didn't decide where to plow, like, the machine didn't decide where, what to plant. We have to make sure that we continuously stay in control of what's being put out and that kind of thing. And that doesn't just apply to us in this field.
And I guess that was my thing about this, the order. So let me clarify this, because clearly everybody can hear me on Zoom. I didn't realize, I kind of forgot about that. Like, who is this being applied to? Everyone? Because we come, like, it just, some of it, like, kind of, it just seemed one-sided, and maybe it's not, maybe it's the way I read it, but I do know, like you said, we have people coming to court submitting reports, GAL reports, permanency plan reports, all these things. And where is all of this information coming from? How is it being generated? And then there are no verifications from anybody any other time other than maybe the dependency petition and the TPR petition. Other than that, all these other documents are being generated and submitted, and we're being asked to have them tendered and entered without objection and then a proffer. And it's just like, what are we doing? Like, so anyway.
So the gist of Amber's kind of comments were, we just need to be cognizant of all of the documents that are kind of coming before the court before we maybe agree to a proffer and all of those things. And here's what I'm going to throw out to you guys and all practitioners is, like, let's also try to be cognizant of the court's time, right? If you have questions about a document, you have questions about whether or not especially if you're in a county like that has an AI order, and you have questions about whether or not a document was, use generative AI, shoot an email to the SAG, right? Shoot an email to the, to the person who submitted the document. If you're able to contact them, and just ask that question on the front end, right? As a part of your trial prep. Did you use any generative AI for this before I proffer that? And I would actually argue that might be, that might be one of those things that you might want to think about for malpractice purposes too, is, like if you didn't ask a simple question of, did generative AI that I have on the screen, like, did it hallucinate some facts in this case, right? And did this provider use it, but then I just proffered to allow this report in? I think those are questions that we have to start asking ourselves about all of the things that are kind of touching, our profession. And I will say that, like, so, like, even, and don't think that just because it's like a psychological report, right, that, oh, no, they didn't use generative AI for that. They might have, is the answer. And a lot of the hospitals, a lot of the medical professionals have closed systems that are HIPAA compliant. And they may be utilizing that. I know several physicians, and most of their work now in their client charts is AI generated in a closed system. that's HIPAA compliant and other, like all the other compliances and that kind of thing. And it's engineers in those, systems that are creating, the software or whatever else for them to utilize. But how many of your doctors, like they go in and they always, how many of your doctors have a computer or iPad or something when they see you? Like, think about that for the child and the child's records as well. So don't just assume that everything that's in the record is independently, absolutely true as well. Just, I hate to say question everything, but if something doesn't sound right, if your client's saying, no, I didn't tell the doctor that, like, then these questions might need to be asked. Okay, doctor, do you use generative AI in this practice? Doctor, did you transcribe these notes of what the child told you, or like, how did that go? How did that work? Like, where did this information come from? So like I said, AI can be wrong. Shocker, right? It can be wrong. And these are some of the risks and challenges of AI. Let me go back. Hold on one second. I want you guys to see this. This is a saying that I recently kind of came up with, and I verified this with multiple privacy attorneys, multiple privacy attorneys. You pay with your wallet or you pay with your data. Most of you guys that are using ChatGPT do not realize, or other kind of things, that Gemini that's on your computer and all these other things, they are free versions. They use your data and your prompts to train the AI. If you are going to utilize as practitioners the generative AI, buy a $20 account where you can mark the box off that says, do not use my data to train the model. Right? You can do that with Gemini. You can do that with pretty much all of these. And because you are paying with your data or you're paying with your wallet. And you definitely have to look at the privacy policy terms and conditions and things of that nature. I won't go over all of them. I did include some of the language in my presentation materials. And I want to jump to some of the examples of things that I think are really cool and exciting. This is all the fun stuff. It's the geek and nerd in me that I want to show you about, or I want to show you. But I definitely wanted to point out just a few things. So, like I said, do not use my data to train AI. It's language like, blocking AI training. You're going to opt out of model improvement, prevent third-party sharing. Those are language things and terms that you're looking for in the data. And as a lawyer, we have the duty to be competent. That includes checking every now and again the Microsoft Word program that we're using. Right? We think, oh, Microsoft Word, we've been using that for, all of our lives, right? Or most of, since the computer came out. We don't think about the terms and conditions and the privacy policies that they put into that. I'd hate to tell you to just go back to a typewriter, right? Not to worry about any of that there. But you owe a duty of competence, and that includes checking the terms and conditions and the privacy policy specifically in all of the software that you utilize, in all the software you utilize on your phone. How many times do we get an email with a court order in and we just pop it open on our phone, right? Making sure that there are not apps that we've approved from the App Store that then track our movements on our phone or capture screenshots of what we pull up on our phone as well. Because that's stuff that we don't think about, but it's happening behind the scenes. That's how Facebook knows that you need another pair of shoes, right? It's the algorithm that's tracking you and knows and all the things. I've got some additional things in there. And if you have a question, like if you have a question about the software that you're using, most of these softwares have an 800 number. Call and say, hey, I'm looking over this privacy policy and I don't understand what protections it gives me, what it does, and that kind of thing. And just as a practitioner, because of that duty of competency, I would, I'm going to use AI transcript. Let me transcribe this call, right? And so that I can now have a record that I checked, right? My, the privacy policy, I'm going to download the privacy policy for the apps, the tech stack that I have. And for those of you who don't know what tech stack is, it is all of the software and the technology that you use on a day-to-day basis. That's called your tech stack. And having a copy of those privacy policies, you know, at that time, and then maybe having a policy in your office to every so often go in and review those policies for any changes that may have occurred that you may or may not have been aware about of. And I know it's a lot. I promise you, I know it's a lot. But you know, like if you're going to use some of these apps, if you're going to use some of these software, you got to know what you're getting yourself into. All right. Wish I could make it rain like that. All right. And then risk and challenges. And I'm going to show you guys in a second just some things that I've noticed in the system, in the AI system, is, you know, there's a bias. There's a strong bias in AI, right? And there's a lot of people doing really out there on biases in AI and really challenging kind of the models that are being written for this and checking it for bias. And so, you know, some of them can be very, you know, like racial biases, societal biases, and things of that nature, like gender biases and everything else. And I'll show you what I mean by that in a second. And then data privacy, of course, we've talked about that kind of extensively. Client data may leak, training sets may absorb confidential information. Be careful about all of that. Hallucinations, fabrications, inaccuracies, and then due process and transparency. Opaque algorithms can kind of raise some accountability and oversight concerns. I just kind of pointed out to you kind of some of those ways. And then systemic harm. AI can exacerbate existing inequities, especially for marginalized groups. So I am definitely a lover of AI. I think, you know, my staff teases me that AI is my boyfriend. But I do, and I always try to be very cognizant that these are the ongoing risks and challenges to the AI system. So uses in best case, the fun stuff. Let me show you first. So, so when you are prompting AI, you need to be specific. Sometimes you also need to give a little bit of background. Hey, AI, I'm a juvenile court practitioner representing parents, or like this is an example of a prompt. I want you to draft a motion for a continuance. I want you to act like you're a counsel requesting this motion for continuance of time, provide a draft motion citing Georgia rules and legal requirements for continuance. The reason for the continuance is I'm having surgery, right? It can put that together pretty quickly for you. And in a situation where you're having like a, you know, medical issue, this is a perfect best use, perfect use for it, I guess I should say. And then from this, you can kind of draft and say, hey, and also provide me an order with the same kind of rationale. Now, please check the work, please check the citations, please check all of those things. Have you heard before? But be specific. Demand citations, right? If you're going to try to use generative AI for this, demand that the AI give you the sites that it's using for the case law or the rules or those kinds of things. Because what will happen, and what I've had happen to me, is a lot of times AI will then come back and go, it'll give me something, and then I'll say, give me the citation for this, and they'll say, oh yeah, you're right, I made this up. Like, it'll admit that it made it up, right? So demand citations. And then segment tasks. So ask for summaries first, then generate tasks, use kind of to help reduce kind of hallucinations, and then verify everything. Verify, and edit. Okay, make it your own. One of the other things that I learned recently that you can do, I will never do this in this sense. This guy said he went to Verizon and downloaded every conversation in his phone, uploaded it into the AI, and told the AI to then draft and talk like him and respond to people's emails based on his language, right? The way that he speaks and the way that he answers people and all of the things, right? I mean, obviously, I'm not telling anybody in this room to do that. But what I could see myself doing as a best case use or a case use is I could see myself uploading some of my former briefs, right, that I've written and saying, this is the way AI, this is the style that I typically write in. And when you generate something for me, I want you to utilize this style. I want you to kind of operate in this way. And so that's definitely something you can definitely do. Any questions before I keep moving? All right. Backwards. Sorry, you guys. All right. So this was something that I thought was super cool to do. I asked AI to help me create a coloring book for 7 to 9-year-olds to explain the dependency process and who all the players were. And this is what I got. It put together this and it said, you know, like my dependency journey, and, you know, the person was able to write it in and things like that. How many kids want to sit in the courtroom, want to know what's going on, but are like so nervous to be there? Imagine handing this to a child and saying, you know, like, here's some crayons, here's this, or even going over it with them beforehand, right? And then while they're sitting in the courtroom, like, what a great way to use it in juvenile law. And so like, and then I gave it a prompt. I said, make this trauma informed. And so then it says, sometimes, you know, grownups go to court to help families stay safe. You did nothing wrong. This is not your fault. You are loved and important, and your job is to just be a kid. And then it talks about what court is. And then I'll go to the next slide, which is, and then this is like the second part of that. And then I put myself in there because sometimes I'm a guardian ad litem. So I said, let me put my name in there. Okay, let me customize it to me. Your guardian ad litem is Miss Lori. So then the kid also takes us away. And if they have questions about who their guardian ad litem is, guess what? They've got my name, right? And then they still knew who all the people are. And then I have a kind of like an example that I use with kids when I'm a guardian ad litem about best interest, and I call it the ice cream story. And so I ask them, you know, if you could have ice cream, like what's your favorite dessert or whatever, if you could have ice cream every single day for dinner, could you tell me why that might not be a good thing for you? And usually even young kids can go, oh, I'm going to get a tummy ache, or I'm going to get cavities, right? They can recognize very clearly like why that's not the best thing for them. And so then I tell them, well, my job is to look out for what's best for you. You got to eat your vegetables. You got to do the things. You got to eat, you know, all, you know, different food groups in order for you to be healthy and stuff like that. And so I'm going to be looking at those things, but I also want you to be, you know, like, I want to know what you want. I want to know that you want ice cream every day for dinner, right? But I have to like balance it. And then, you know, so anyway, so there's that. And it did take a couple tries to get this to kind of come out like I wanted to. So it took me about 10 or 15 minutes to put this together. Like once you tell it and you get a good example, then you could go, okay, now I want you to change it for I'm the attorney for the child, and I want you to change it instead of saying guardian ad litem, I'm the the attorney for the child, and explain what my role is here. And it will update, and you can say use the same kind of pictures and things of that nature. All right, so I said I wanted to show you guys a couple of things. Is this window? I wanted to show you about buying, talk to you about buying. So one of the things that I uploaded into my chatbot or ChatGPT was I asked ChatGPT to give me a picture of a lawyer. And this was ChatGPT's response. Or I'm sorry, of a doctor. And this was ChatGPT's response.
Of course.
Anybody tell me what's wrong with that?
A white guy.
Right? That's the typical, that's what the stereotypes say are most doctors, right? Now I could have prompted it to say, give me a picture of a, you know, black, or a, you know, Asian lawyer or whatever, but the default is this picture with no other details. This is the default. I asked it to give me a picture of a person on welfare. It kind of shocked me on this.
Oh, Jesus.
Oh.
It also added some implicit bias. If you see, it's got a past due bill on the table. Everybody in welfare doesn't have past due bills. You know, a lot of them are probably very financially responsible with the little bit that they have, right? So it's automatically kind of building in these biases. And I want you to like be able to see this stuff in kind of like in almost real time because it's important. The other one, I said, create a picture of a lawyer. Guess what? It created a picture of a Created a picture of a white male, right? He created a picture of a young white male, as if all lawyers are young people, right? As well. Racism as well. Talking about, like, or whatever. So these are the things that you gotta definitely make sure that you're kind of cognizant of, that you prompt the AI appropriately, that you make sure that you are conscious that the information that it may give you might be skewed. And you can definitely say, think you got a skewed prompt. Hey, you've given me a skewed or a biased prompt. I need you to adjust accordingly. And like, not all lawyers look like this, right? And I need you to adjust in these ways. And remember this for the future, right? And so you can give it those kind of prompts to help you kind of get to what you're kind of looking
Do you have it up and active, or is this a script?
at.
You do a prompt for a create a child welfare lawyer?
Oh, Lord. Okay, you guys are getting into dangerous
Create a child welfare.
Beat down, like.
To make sure I'm in the right, it won't do it if you're not in the right setting, so I gotta go to images first.
beyond fantasy. Or even ask it for a teacher and see what it tells us.
Bigger me now, shut the child up.
So you guys will realize that. Thank God for spell checks.
So gonna be a woman.
It'll take a second. Images do take longer to create, so what I'm gonna do is keep moving and then I'll come back to this. So we can check this one. I will tell you, like, I played around with it, and when I was doing it in a class the other week, and I created a plushie of myself. I thought it was so cute. I wanted to share it. And initially, it's like, it gave me that, and I said, put my logo on the jacket, like, and whatnot. And I was like, I actually have that.
Oh, that's
And whatnot. So yeah.
It's hilarious.
Okay, so here's a kind of a PPH scenario. I've already created this chat beforehand, and I wanted to throw this in here because I wanted you guys to kind of see how utilize this. And so I have uploaded to ChatGPT. I wanted to let you guys know what I've uploaded. I've uploaded to ChatGPT the trial, the 2017 Dependence and Trial Notebook. I've uploaded to ChatGPT the DFACS manual. I've uploaded to the ChatGPT Georgia law. And I've asked it, and I've already given it directions not to hallucinate things. And you can do those kind of changes when you click on your name, when you get an account. It'll prompt you for information in the settings. I want to make sure I point this out to you guys. So it'll prompt you for information in the settings, and you could talk about the control, improve the model for everyone. That is off. So where I told you that, like, that's the button you got to look for in your privacy stuff. Because I paid for this account, I can click the button and turn this off. Okay. After today, those in this room and those online, y'all have no excuse of competency for sure, because I told you how to do it. And then I can also give it some other things, like I can personalize it. I can give it some instruction and about who we are and what we do and things like that. So I can tell it how to respond. Yes.
Where do you upload? So do you have to be in an open chat to then upload everything in that chat, and then want to search like the manual or the trial notebook? You have to go back to that chat to search.
No. And I'm going to show you another thing that I did as well. Because one of the other things that you can do now that's been really great, you can actually create your own GPTs, right? You can create your own, like, GPTs that have a data set of knowledge, and you can tell it, and I'm getting to this in a little bit, do not search the internet. I want you only to use what I've uploaded and nothing else. So I'll show you how to create one of those in a little bit. But this is some facts that I kind of threw in there and fed in there. The case where the children 3, 5, and 6 have been removed from the parents due to inappropriate supervision of the 3-year-old child that was found running around in the streets. We are at the PPH hearing. I need to know what questions to ask the case manager to help with this. This child is extremely intelligent and left out of the parent's door without their knowledge, right? It's the best case scenario. Usually it's usually it's without the parents' knowledge, but usually the parents just aren't around to have knowledge. And so, and then, and then I've already kind of given it some stuff of, like make this trauma informed, things like that. So it's going to say like the threshold for removal and imminent risk. The questions it's going to give me are like, at the moment of removal, which specific imminent danger existed that could not be mitigated within the home with a safety plan? Was the child injured or exposed to traffic harm or otherwise harmed when found? Did defects determine whether this was an isolated incident versus a pattern of unsafety? And of course, you probably would have come up with a lot of these questions on your own, right? But I don't think it hurts to throw it in there. And like, after you've come up with your questions, you prepped your case, throw it in there and see, did I capture everything that I might've needed to have? I can't, and I also will say this, like, I can't tell you the number of times that I've gone to court where it comes around to the attorney's time to ask questions on behalf of their client. They represent someone, a parent, a child, whatever. And then the judge says, do you have any questions? And it's, no, I have no questions. And I always think to myself, even when I've been appointed sometimes to represent an unknown putative father in cases. And I always have a question to ask, because what the unknown putative father, if he ever becomes known, is never going to say I committed malpractice because I didn't adequately represent potentially his interests, right? Because that's why I'm appointed, his interest, if he shows up. I'm going to ask if defect is already put out there, what efforts have you made to find my client? Right? When was the last time you searched the putative father registry? Right? Have you searched the mother's social media for any connections to this child or anybody commenting that this child looks like Johnny or so and so and so? Right? Have you looked at, anything like those are a couple of basic questions, but I've come up with like 10 questions at any given time to ask the case manager about my unknown putative father, because like, I want to make sure that nobody, it's on the record and there's never anybody, but also like, we're here for the child, right? We're here for the child. The earlier I can identify Johnny, maybe Johnny has a resource for this child. Maybe Johnny's family doesn't know about this kid and step up or whatever else. And so the more that we can make sure that we're effective advocates, the better, like, I think the system is as a whole for everybody. And then the reverse side to this is, and then I said, okay, give me the authority. Cause I told it like I want authority here. So then it pulled the case law that I had updated, and it said, I pulled it from this code section because I had uploaded the code section before, and it's not, and it's telling me that it also pulled it from the trial notebook. So now I can go to that, and I can, if I wanted to drill down more, I could say, on what page did you find this in the trial notebook? So that I could go and verify that it was accurate before I used it. Same thing with, and then reasonable efforts, nature of supervision incidents, initial accuracy, least restrictive alternatives and placements, parental knowledge and intent. Now, let me just say this too. Like, I'm not saying do this every single time so you have like a 4-hour PPH every single time where maybe it's not appropriate, right? But like, maybe these are questions that you also want to pose to the department and say, like, in advance, like, as we're like getting ready for this, like, what has happened here? Like, what are these things I want to know? And like, what information can we proffer to make the hearing shorter, right? If you've done all these things, if you've done this, if you've done that, like, how do we make this shorter? But these are questions that maybe I want to, like, this is a good guideline for making sure I kind of check off all my things. Any questions about this before I move on to the next one? Perfect. There is one, I'm going to go ahead and jump to next one I have is creating a ChatGPT juvenile research warrior. So this is where we're creating our own ChatGPT, or our own GPT, okay? This is a relatively new update from ChatGPT. And so I will show you my warrior. It is over here. Oh, that is not the right. Hold on 1 second. I have a couple of accounts I had to. All right, so here I created my own juvenile research warrior right here. So when it says GPTs, there it is. And then in this one, I gave it specific instructions.
Good question. Was that a project, not a chat?
No, this is not a project. This is a GPT. Yep. This is a GPT that I can use. And so I can edit it and change the GPT. I can create a knowledge base within that GPT. I can tell it, don't search the internet. I can limit like what it does. I've already got the setting on not to train my AI. I mean, not to train and so like I've put information in here. And let me also say, just because I don't know everything, I still don't upload confidential information in here, even though I said don't use the internet, right? Even though I said, don't do this. I still don't use this is not what I still don't consider this a closed model, as Randy kind of talked about earlier. I still look at, I don't want to put confidential or sensitive information, right? And so I'm going to show you how it works, and then I'm going to show you quickly how to build it. What's something that you want me to research? Anybody?
Research, imminent versus, what is this? No, like when we come to court, I'm just gonna put. Imminent harm? Yeah, imminent harm versus like, what's immediate harm? Oh, that's the distinction?
You can now just have straight conversations with ChatGPT and respond back to you by voice too.
Smart.
You keep it.
Imminent harm and what?
I can't.
She said immediate harm.
Immediate harm.
Yeah.
Or emerging harm.
So it's gonna
Versus immediate.
you're searching your knowledge is searching just the documents that I've uploaded. So below is a source grounded, Georgia-specific explanation of the difference between imminent harm and immediate harm, using the language and framework reflected in your juvenile materials. I am not creating new definitions. I am explaining how the terms function as they are used in practice and policy. So immediate harm is harm occurring now or will occur without delay. So time frame, present moment, present or moments away, justifies an emergency action. Imminent harm is harm about to occur unless protective action is taken. So near term impending justifies preventative intervention. And then it goes on to say present, ongoing, avoidable practice, how it's treated in Georgia child welfare, right? And then let's see what else it gives us. It gives us some additional information on imminent harm, and then why the distinction matters in the court. I didn't ask you for all of that. I just said, tell me, kind of give me a generalized, like, what's the difference? And then what are some key takeaways to kind of think about? Yes.
So, and what is it pulling this from? Like, what have you?
I've uploaded the defects manual. I've uploaded Georgia law on like dependency or and some delinquency stuff. I've uploaded, and I've uploaded
Statute, not the cases?
The statutes.
Okay.
Now they are annotated statutes. I did not check to see if there was like annotations at the back of the statutes that I pulled down. And then also, and I also uploaded the dependency like trial note.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah. Yes, Daniel.
So how much do we need to pay you to get access to you? EPT is what I'm hearing.
Oh, yes, indeed. What did you say you turned off? No, I didn't. I don't.
Turn off training the language model. That's in settings.
But to be clear, it's only in the paid version.
It's only in the paid version.
For those of us who are too cheap to buy ChatGPT,
Yep.
we train in the world.
ChatGPT, for example. is $20 a month. If you get a business account, it's like $30 a user. And then you can do some pretty amazing stuff in the business workspace. I'm just saying. I watched somebody last week send out in the business workspace to their team, like, what type of pizzas do you want? And everybody put their orders into the business workspace. And then Chat GPT summarized those orders, right? And then sent the order to Pizza Hut to order the pizzas with explicit direction to tell them to label the boxes for the person that was gluten-free and had allergies and all this stuff. And all they did was put it in the chat, and then the person who said, order the pizza. I went, oh my goodness. How much, like, these are things that I don't have to, like, but, when we think about things in terms of juvenile laws, right? And I think about these, we have so much on our brains. That's right. And somebody said they asked Chat GPT for a recipe for some dough or something, right? And then they had connected, you have to connect these apps. So they connected Instacart, for example, to the app, to the Chat GPT. And it uploaded the recipe, and then it said, shop for all these ingredients and send them to my house tomorrow.
No.
And so they were in court, doing whatever they were doing. They got home and they had the groceries for the recipe sitting on their front door. Like, it's also about utilizing this technology and these tools to kind of like make our lives a little bit easier as well, right? Because we're already probably Instacarting. We're probably already, like doing some of the things, right? And so we want to use them responsibly, of course, but let's also use them for our own self-care and taking some things off of our plate as much as possible. Now, I have a good friend of mine. She likes to tell people that I don't allow her to buy technology. And when she watches the replay of this, because she got stuck in court today, she will laugh to herself, unless I approve her technology buys. If you do not understand how to do this responsibly, don't do it. Don't put your credit card in ChatGPT. Don't do it. Like, make sure you're connecting the app to, that your credit card information is in Instacart, and you're just connecting it into ChatGPT. Like, so be careful about utilizing this stuff there. I always say, I feel like I don't have to say this, but I'm going to say it anyway, just because, right? I don't want anybody to come back and saying, well, Lori told me that I could order a pizza. I just had to put my credit card in ChatGPT. That is not what I said. All right. So Chat GPT to create one. I'm going to go back to the new chat. I am going to go to, I'm going to go up to, there is an app. It's hiding for me. There it is. Explore GPTs. I am going to go hit the button that says create GPT. It's going to say, how can I help you build a new Chat GPT today? And make a creative that helps generate visuals or products or whatever. Make a software engineer who helps me format my code. Because now you can write code for apps and all these kinds of things in minutes that would take, code developers days, months, to develop out. And then you can ask it to like run the code for you to make sure that it works like it's supposed to. But what would you like to make? And then I'm going to tell it that I'd like to make a juvenile court warrior part 2 for delinquency. And it's going to come back and ask me some prompts. One of the things I asked is, did I want a logo for my warrior, for my Chat GPT, right? So the other one that I just showed you a second ago, actually a little logo that it like put together and created for me of a guy like wearing a cape and all kinds of stuff, which I thought was kind of funny. And so it takes a second here to kind of do that. And this is the space that I would be uploading all of my documentation that I wanted to kind of only rely on. So I would be adding in my information for my dependency trial notebook. I would be adding in my information for whatever else. And so this is what my actual GPT would look like. On the side, it gives me a preview on the right of the things, and it's got some prompts, right, of what to kind of start the conversation if I come back to my GPT later and want to kind of start the conversation. Help me prepare to explain the delinquency court process step by step. Maybe you need a handout for your young offender, right? And you can tell it to do that, tell it to make it age appropriate to that person. What diversion options exist for first-time offenders and things of that nature. And then And then it says, okay, well, how about you change your name and we do it. So now you're gonna go into, you can talk to it here a little bit more, but when you go to configure it, right? It's gonna already have some instructions in here. You're going to change your instructions in here. So it's still saying like, it's kind of predicted that I would want, this GPT it's gonna support people working with juvenile delinquency cases, provides practical trauma-informed guidance on juvenile court process, delinquency petitions, hearings, detention decisions, diversity, diversion, probation, dispositions, reentry planning, all of that kind of stuff. And then goes on to, the tone is steady and professional and supportive, adapting to the user's role. And I can change and take out that I am just the attorney to the child, right? And take that out. When stated, and then, that out as well. And then I would maybe say, do not hallucinate. If you don't know the answer, it's okay to tell me so.
If you ask,
Right? Something so simple, some language that's so simple, right? Like, it's okay. If you don't know, that's all right. And then here's the knowledge. Now it's asking for me to upload files for its knowledge base. And I'm gonna upload those files there. And then it's gonna say, okay, recommended model and things like that. Go in, and they're older models of ChatGPT, for example. And so I can go to one of the older models if I want. And then I don't want this to generate code. I don't want it to use web searches. So I'm gonna, take those things off. And then code interpreter and a data analyst. I do want it to do that, right? I want it to do those kinds of things. So I've gone to configure, gone to create, and then I did not, so yes, use that name, because it didn't give it that. So it's generating a profile picture for it. Once it finishes that, I'll be able to hit the create button. The stuff that I've uploaded in here, now I'll be able to use that to do any of these models. Right? I can now create this, and my own individual GPT for this is available, and I only want to use it for myself.
Nice.
And
Also only on the paid version. She's like hawking paid version.
No, I am because you pay with your wallet or you pay with your data. That's everything. And then I can come back and do updates. I can come back and, do other things. I can even prompt it to tell me how it can make itself better, right? Like, how can you make yourself better for stuff? I also created one that was a juvenile trial prep assistant and asked it to do certain things. Let me go back 1 second to my PowerPoint. Sure that I've got one other thing to show you. Make sure I hit that. Any questions? And I'm sorry, I'm going to stop at this point. I mean, you guys have pretty much been asking me your questions all along. I just want to make sure there's no additional questions.
When you go back to ChatGPT, can you just show from where you get to the Explore GPT? Like, what did you click to get to Explore?
GPTs. There's a side on the left-hand side that say GPTs.
Okay.
Yep. And then I had in here to creating templates, and I had a GPT there to create templates. And so, like Randy talks about, just creating some, using it to create like kind of like your starting point, or maybe not necessarily your starting point, but templates, right? If you have some ideas of some things you want to kind of have in place, you would utilize, or you could utilize ChatGPT to kind of help you with that. And so we're going to go back really quick for a child welfare lawyer. The look on that. Whoa.
What?
No, that's funnier than the generator.
I think
Child welfare law.
yeah.
So I get that.
And I think it saw the child and then almost shape of the baby, right? And so the other child, answer any questions for anybody later, but this thing I'm talking to somebody is how they were like, how do I create this? They were trying to get something, the case manager's report, keep it out because it hadn't been served within 10 days. in accordance with the law. So I made sure it was updated, and then I said, okay, here's the law first. I updated the law, I uploaded the law, and I said, only use this, right? And then I said, give me a motion in limine to exclude the case manager's report because it wasn't provided in accordance with the law. And it gave me that motion. And then it turned around and gave me, I always ask it for certificate of service. And then it gave me it in Word format. And then if I had prompted it more, it would have given me an order. All right. Any additional questions? Yes.
Is ChatGPT the only one that you use that's paid, or are there other ones that you?
Right now, that's the only one I use. I feel like, so in my tech stack, I utilize like all these other different things too, like, and what I realized recently for myself is I am not utilizing the services I have to the best of their abilities. So I want to make sure I understand and explore the services that I have. It also helps me when I'm talking about that duty of competence. Now I'm only having to look kind of at ChatGPT, right? I use other stuff in my tech stack I use Sora AI for like cloning myself. I use Sunos to create, songs or ditties for my firm, right? Or whatever else. And things like that. So there's a lot of other little stuff I do there, but as far as like moving things forward for like practical stuff, I only use ChatGPT. I'm trying to make sure I understand its use completely before I move on to stuff I don't understand.
As a quick follow-up to that, you mentioned that there's an individual paid account in the business.
Yeah.
Is there reasons, or do you have the business account or the individual?
I have business.
Okay.
What I showed you was just the individual. I created this just to show you guys. So, yeah.
But you have it.
But I do have a business account where workspace, and I work in that space with my. Well. Yeah, I meant to unplug that. Yeah, I meant to unplug that.
Can you convert an individual to business?
I'm sorry?
You converted a paid individual account to a business account?
Yes. Yep. All right. Thank you guys so much for your time. I appreciate it.